Murders were not uncommon in the Bay Area at that time, and he doesn't want to be forgotten. He wants to show that what he's doing is a big deal.
In the late 1960s, the San Francisco Bay Area was a hub of peace, love, and social change. However, beneath the surface of this vibrant community, a mysterious figure emerged, casting a shadow of fear over its residents. This was the era of the Zodiac Killer, a mastermind who orchestrated a series of events that would leave the Bay Area on edge. It began on December 20th, 1968, when a young couple, David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen, were attacked while parked in a remote area of Vallejo. The incident marked the beginning of a cryptic game of cat and mouse, with the Zodiac Killer always seeming to be one step ahead of the law. As the events unfolded, the Zodiac Killer's modus operandi became increasingly intriguing. He didn't just commit crimes, he crafted a web of mystery, sending cryptic letters and codes to regional newspapers. These messages were laced with a twisted sense of humor and a hint of megalomania, as the Zodiac Killer boasted of his actions and threatened to continue. One of the most chilling aspects of the Zodiac Killer's letters was his claim of a sinister motive.
They believed that the cipher would contain the word kill, so they looked for pairings of certain symbols that could represent two-letter L's, and they were successful. The message read, "I like killing people because it's so much fun."
This justification sent shockwaves through the community, leaving many to wonder about the true nature of the perpetrator. As the investigation continued, law enforcement became entangled in a complex game of detection. They scoured the Bay Area for clues, followed up on tips, and interviewed suspects, but the Zodiac Killer remained elusive. In 1974, the Zodiac Killer sent his final confirmed letter, making a startling claim that would leave the community stunned. Despite numerous investigations and tips, the Zodiac Killer's true identity remained a mystery. As the investigation into the Zodiac Killer's activities unfolded, detectives were confronted with a series of cryptic letters and codes, each one more perplexing than the last. The killer's correspondence was a complex game of cat and mouse, with the police and media outlets as his pawns. The letters began arriving in July 1969, with the first one being sent to the San Francisco Chronicle, San Francisco Examiner, and Vallejo Times. This letter included a cryptogram known as the Z408 cipher. As the months passed, the Zodiac Killer's letters continued to arrive, each one more ominous than the last. He made claims that sent shockwaves through the community, and he threatened to continue his activities unless the police could intervene. The police were on high alert, racing against time to decipher the codes and uncover the killer's identity. But the Zodiac Killer remained one step ahead. As the months went by, the Zodiac Killer's letters became less frequent, but no less intriguing. He sent a greeting card to the Chronicle in April 1970, and a letter to the Los Angeles Times in March 1971. But then suddenly, the letters stopped. The Zodiac Killer seemed to have vanished into thin air. Or had he? In January 1974, a final letter arrived at the Chronicle. It was a brief, cryptic message that seemed to hint at the killer's continued presence. The police were left to ponder the meaning behind the Zodiac Killer's letters, and to wonder if they would ever uncover his true identity. The darkness of the night seemed to shroud the small town of Vallejo, California, as a sense of unease settled over its residents. It had been 7 months since the mysterious events on Lake Herman Road, which had left the community reeling. The police were no closer to uncovering the truth, and the residents were on edge. But on the night of July 4th, 1969, the sense of unease escalated. Darlene Ferrin, a 22-year-old waitress, and her friend Michael Mageau, 19, had decided to meet up for a night out. They drove to Blue Rock Springs Park, a secluded spot on the outskirts of Vallejo. Before we dive into the more details of these heinous crimes, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel. Your support means the world to us. As they parked, they noticed a car following them. Ferrin, sensing something was off, drove to a nearby parking lot, hoping to lose the mysterious driver. But the car reappeared, and the driver parked next to them. 𝐬𝐿, feeling uneasy, asked Ferrin who the driver was. Ferrin reassured him, but the stranger's actions soon proved her wrong. He approached their car, shining a flashlight into their faces. Assuming he was a police officer, they rolled down the window. But instead of asking for their license and registration, the stranger's intentions became clear. He carried out a shocking act that left the two victims fighting for their lives. 𝐬𝐿, despite his injuries, managed to escape the car and call for help. Ferrin, however, succumbed to her injuries. The police were left with a new set of clues, but the perpetrator remained one step ahead. The investigation led them down a twisted path of cryptic letters and codes, but the truth behind the events remained a mystery. The community was left to wonder if they would ever be safe again. As the police delved deeper into the case, they received a chilling phone call from a payphone just blocks from the police station. The caller claimed responsibility for the events, boasting of his actions and leaving the police with more questions than answers. The perpetrator had struck again, leaving a trail of mystery in his wake. But the police were determined to uncover his identity, no matter what it took. The game of cat and mouse had begun, and only time would tell who would come out on top. As detectives continued to investigate the Zodiac's activities, they found themselves entangled in a complex web of cryptic clues. The killer's true identity remained shrouded in mystery, but one thing was certain: he was always one step ahead. Theories emerged that Darlene Ferrin, the victim of the Blue Rock Springs incident, may have had a prior connection with her assailant. Her friends reported that she had been acting strangely in the days leading up to the event, sparking speculation about a potential relationship. As detectives delved deeper into the case, they stumbled upon a new lead: a cryptic letter sent to the Vallejo Times, San Francisco Chronicle, and San Francisco Examiner. The letter, penned by someone claiming to be the Zodiac, took credit for the incidents in Vallejo and included a cryptogram known as the Z408 cipher. The letter was riddled with misspellings and ominous warnings, marking the debut of the Zodiac persona.
We were able to identify a few phrases that ended up being part of the right solution. Phrases like "trying to catch me" and "gas chamber." Once we saw those phrases, we took a closer look in our experiments, and after a little bit of effort, we were able to unlock the entire message.
The writer provided meticulous details about the incidents, taunting the police with his cryptic clues. As detectives struggled to decipher the Z408 cipher, the Zodiac sent another letter, this one to the Examiner. The mysterious message revealed a chilling insight into the Zodiac's mindset. The Zodiac explained that his actions were driven by a twisted desire to collect slaves for his afterlife. The message offered a disturbing glimpse into the mind of the perpetrator, leaving detectives wondering if they would ever be able to uncover his true identity. As the investigation continued, detectives found themselves entangled in a cat-and-mouse game with the Zodiac. The perpetrator remained at large, watching and waiting for his next move. The question on everyone's mind was, what would happen next? The sun was casting its golden glow over Lake Berryessa on September 27, 1969, as Pacific Union College students Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard settled into their peaceful picnic spot. But their serenity was short-lived, as a sense of unease settled over them. As they sat together, Shepard noticed a man watching them from behind a tree. Her instincts screamed at her to be cautious, and before she could react, the man emerged, his face hidden behind a black hood. A chill ran down Hartnell's spine as the man's intentions became clear. The couple's fear grew as the man's sinister plan unfolded. He forced Shepard to bind Hartnell, and then he took control. his actions swift and deliberate. Hartnell and Shepard were left helpless, their fate hanging in the balance. As the man vanished into the trees, Hartnell and Shepard were left to pick up the pieces. A fisherman and his son, alerted by their distress, rushed to their aid, and soon park rangers and deputies arrived to tend to the couple. Shepard, despite her fragile state, managed to provide a detailed description of their attacker before falling into a deep sleep. The community held its breath, hoping for her recovery. The investigation that followed was meticulous, with detectives scouring the crime scene for clues. They found a cryptic message scrawled on Hartnell's car door, boasting of the attacker's exploits. The symbol, now infamous, seemed to mock the authorities, daring them to uncover the truth. As the days passed, the community's anxiety grew. The Zodiac's mysterious game of cat and mouse continued to unfold, shrouding the city of San Francisco in an aura of suspense. Back in the autumn of 1969. It was a chilly evening, October 11th, 1969, when Paul Stein, a doctoral student and part-time cab driver, picked up a fare in downtown San Francisco. The passenger, who was later revealed to be the Zodiac, directed Stone to drive to Presidio Heights. As they arrived at Washington and Maple Streets, the Zodiac requested to be driven to another block. It was a decision that would change everything. At Washington and Cherry, the Zodiac's true intentions became alarmingly clear. He took unexpected action, leaving Stein's situation uncertain. 3 teenagers who witnessed the event quickly called the authorities, providing a detailed description of the suspect. However, in a surprising twist, the dispatcher mistakenly alerted the police that the suspect was of a different description. 2 patrol officers responded to the call, encountering a man who claimed to have witnessed the incident. He described a person heading east, and the officers, unaware that they had just spoken to the suspect, hurried away to investigate. As the investigation unfolded, the Zodiac continued to intrigue the authorities. He sent a cryptic message to the San Francisco Chronicle, boasting about his actions and claiming to have secretly watched the police search for him. The letter also contained a puzzling statement, leaving the police to wonder what his next move would be. The case was assigned to SFPD detectives Bill Armstrong and Dave Toshi. Toshi became deeply invested in the case, working tirelessly to uncover the Zodiac's true identity. He spent years analyzing evidence, filling 8 filing cabinets with potential suspects. Despite his dedication, the Zodiac remained one step ahead, always seeming to vanish into thin air. As the years passed, the Zodiac's enigma grew, captivating the public's imagination. But for Toshi, the case became an all-consuming puzzle, driving him to take unconventional measures. In a surprising twist, Toshi was revealed to have written anonymous letters praising his investigative work. The move ultimately led to his reassignment. The Zodiac's true identity remained a mystery, but one thing was certain: he had left an indelible mark on the city of San Francisco, and his intriguing legacy would continue to fascinate the public for years to come. It all started on October 22, 1969, when a mental patient named Eric Weil duped attorney Melvin Belli into a conversation on KGO TV's AM San Francisco. Weil claimed to be the Zodiac, but investigators quickly concluded that he was not the real deal. The genuine Zodiac remained at large, watching and waiting for his next opportunity to make a move. The Zodiac's next move came on November 8, 1969, when he mailed a card with a 340-character cryptogram to the Chronicle. He asked for his code to be printed on the front page, and it remained unsolved for 51 years. The cryptogram, known as the Z340, was a puzzle that would stump even the most skilled cryptologists. But the Zodiac didn't stop there. On November 9, 1969, he mailed a 7-page letter to the Chronicle, boasting about his cleverness and making a disturbing claim. He included a diagram that sent a chill down the spines of the police and the public. As the months passed, the Zodiac continued to communicate with the authorities and the press. He mailed a letter to Marvin Belli on December 20th, 1969, enclosing another piece of evidence. He pleaded for help, claiming that he was struggling to cope. The Zodiac's letters and cryptograms continued to flow in 1970. In a letter to the San Francisco Chronicle postmarked April 20th, it was followed by a 13-character cipher that had still not been definitively solved by the end of the year. The Zodiac's messages continued to unsettle the police and the public. He made a bold statement, denying responsibility for a tragic event. However, he added a sinister comment, sending a wave of unease through the city. The police and the public were left wondering what his next move would be. Would he finally be caught, or would he continue to evade the authorities? The answer, much like the Zodiac's true identity, remained a mystery, leaving everyone on edge, waiting for the next development. The city of San Francisco, leaving a trail of intrigue in its wake. As the summer of 1970 approached, the Zodiac's silence was broken once again, and he began to taunt the police with a series of cryptic letters and codes. It had all started on June 26, 1970, when the Zodiac had mailed a letter to the Chronicle, expressing his disappointment that no one was wearing Zodiac buttons. He had hinted at a mysterious event that would leave the police baffled. The letter had been accompanied by a Phillips 66 roadmap of the San Francisco Bay Area, with a modified symbol drawn at Mount Diablo. The Zodiac's message had been cryptic, but one thing had been clear. He had been determined to leave his mark on the city. The police had been left scrambling to decipher the code, but the Zodiac had remained one step ahead, always seeming to vanish into thin air. As the summer had worn on, the Zodiac's letters had continued to flow. On July 24, 1970, he mailed another letter to the Chronicle, complaining once again about the lack of Zodiac buttons. He had claimed to have a little list of potential targets, and his words had sent a chill down the spines of the police and the public. But the Zodiac had not been finished yet. 2 days later, on July 26, 1970, he had mailed another letter to the Chronicle, parodying a famous song from the Mikado. His lyrics had been unsettling and intriguing, and the police had known they had to take his messages seriously. As the months passed, the Zodiac's game of cat and mouse had continued to unfold. He had mailed a series of cryptic cards and letters, each one more baffling than the last. The police had been left scrambling to keep up, but the Zodiac had remained always one step ahead. And then, on October 7, 1970, the Zodiac had made another move. He had mailed a 3x5-inch card to the Chronicle, signed with his familiar symbol. The card had been punched with 13 holes, and its message had been formed by pasting type from the Chronicle. The police had been intrigued by the card, and they had known they had to take the Zodiac's messages seriously. But the Zodiac had not been finished yet. On October 27, 1970, he mailed a card to Paul Avery, a journalist who had been investigating the Zodiac's crimes. The card had been signed with the Zodiac's symbol, and its message had been ominous. The police had been left scrambling to protect Avery, but the Zodiac had remained at large, always seeming to vanish into thin air. Would he finally be caught, or would he continue to evade the authorities? The answer, much like the Zodiac's true identity, had remained a mystery, leaving everyone on edge, waiting for the next development. As the mysterious figure known as the Zodiac continued to fascinate the city of San Francisco, a new development emerged. On March 13, 1971, a letter arrived at the Los Angeles Times, claiming 17 victims and taunting the police. The postmark, bearing the name of the town Pleasanton, had seemed like a twisted joke. The letter had sparked a flurry of activity as the police had scrambled to respond. But as the months had passed, the Zodiac's silence had grown. leaving the city in a state of uneasy anticipation. It was not until nearly 3 years later, on January 29, 1974, that the Zodiac made another move. A letter had arrived at the Chronicle complaining about a columnist and praising the film The Exorcist. The letter had included a cryptic symbol and a new score, leaving the police to wonder what it might have meant. The city of San Francisco had been left to wonder if they would ever uncover the truth. The police had received numerous letters and tips, but none of them seemed to lead to the Zodiac's true identity. As the Zodiac's mysterious trail continued to unfold, a new chapter emerged in the intriguing saga. It was a chapter that would take us back in time to a series of events that had shaken the very foundations of California. It began on February 5, 1964, when a newlywed couple, Johnny Ray Swindle and Joyce Ann Swindle, were found deceased on Ocean Beach in San Diego. The police were baffled by the senseless tragedy, and it wasn't until years later that a possible connection to the Zodiac emerged. A watch found at the scene had also been linked to another case, and it was assumed to have been a crucial piece of evidence. But the Zodiac's trail of mystery hadn't ended there. On October 30th, 1966, Cherry Jo Bates, an 18-year-old student at Riverside City College, was found deceased. A watch was discovered nearby, and a cryptic message was sent to the police, claiming responsibility for the tragedy. The message had been signed with a chilling warning: "Bates is not the first and she will not be the last." It was a warning that had haunted the police and the public for years, as they struggled to uncover the truth behind the Zodiac's sinister game of cat and mouse. As the investigation continued, a mysterious poem had been discovered carved into the bottom side of a desktop in the RCC library. The poem's language and handwriting resembled that of the Zodiac's letters. It had been a discovery that had raised more questions than answers, as the police had struggled to connect the dots between the Zodiac's crimes. But one thing had been certain: the Zodiac's trail of mystery had been far from over, and the city of San Francisco had been bracing itself for the next twist in the intriguing saga. As the Zodiac's mysterious trail continued to unfold, a new wave of intrigue emerged in the late 1960s and early 1970s. It was a period that had been marked by a series of puzzling events that had tested the limits of the police and had left the public gripped with anticipation. During this chaos, a young couple, Enidine Molina and Fermin Rodriguez, were found deceased on June 8, 1967. The circumstances surrounding their deaths had been unclear, but the senseless tragedy had left a lasting impact on the community. Just a few years later, on February 21, 1970, John Franklin Hood and his fiancée Sandra Garcia were discovered on East Beach in Santa Barbara. The scene had been eerily similar to the 1963 incident involving Domingos and Edwards, and it had seemed that the Zodiac's sinister game of cat and mouse had been far from over. But the Zodiac's next move had been one of his most brazen yet. On the night of March 22, 1970, Kathleen Johns had been driving to Petaluma with her 10-month-old daughter when a stranger pulled her over, claiming that her left rear wheel was loose. What had followed had been a harrowing ordeal that had left Johns shaken to her core. As the investigation into the Zodiac's activities continued, a new lead had emerged in the form of a mysterious postcard sent to Paul Avery, a journalist who had been covering the Zodiac's case. The postcard had been a cryptic message that had seemed to hint at the Zodiac's next move, and it had proved to be a crucial piece of evidence in the ongoing investigation. But the Zodiac's trail of mystery had been far from over. In the years that followed, a series of puzzling events took place, each one bearing the hallmarks of the Zodiac's sinister style. It had been a period marked by anticipation and uncertainty, as the police had struggled to keep pace with the Zodiac's twisted game of cat and mouse. As the years went by, the Zodiac's legend grew, and the case became one of the most infamous in American history. But despite the passage of time, the Zodiac's true identity had remained a mystery, leaving behind only a trail of clues and a haunting sense of intrigue. Conclusion: the Zodiac Killer case was one of the most intriguing mysteries in American history. For decades, the public was captivated by a series of cryptic letters and codes sent to the press by an individual who remained unknown. The case spawned a multitude of investigations, tips, and suspects, yet the killer's identity remained a mystery. The San Francisco Police Department investigated over 2,500 suspects, with a handful considered credible. One suspect, Arthur Lee Allen, was publicly named by the police, but he denied any involvement, and the evidence against him ultimately proved inconclusive. Other suspects were identified over the years, but none were officially linked to the case. The Zodiac Killer's cryptic communications inspired a community of amateur sleuths known as zodiologists, who dedicated themselves to solving the case. The case also inspired numerous books, documentaries, and films, including Robert Graysmith's influential book, Zodiac. Despite the passage of time, the case remained a source of fascination, inspiring new generations of researchers and enthusiasts. As the years went by, the anticipation built, and the public remained eager to uncover the truth behind the Zodiac Killer's identity. Would the case ever be solved, or would the killer's secrets remain forever hidden? Only time will tell. Thank you for watching. If you found this video thought-provoking, please consider subscribing for more content. Share with your friends and family to spark meaningful conversations. Your support means the world.